We're continuing on Shecharuch Rachaim. We're on Siman Ayin Dalit, Seif Gimel, Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Bet of the regular prints of Mishna Berurah. Maran writes, Im ha'adam mechabek gufo bizro'otav da'ininan le'kafsaka. We spoke about the fact that if a person is not covered, or they're covered with a chaluk, a garment, which like a robes without any hefsek, any division between the heart and the erva, the area of erva, then you cannot say bracha or learn and say Shema and so on and so forth. And now we have a remedy for that, which is hugging yourself like this in a tight way, which is considered a hefsek between heart and erva. Now, this happens to work both when you have a chaluk, a long gown, which doesn't have any belt on it, that could act as a belt, or even if a person is in a clear water, let's say you're in a pool of water without any pants or swimming suit, and the heart also is in the water, so you could divide between heart and the makom erva. Now, we mentioned before that en guf mechatzeh asmo, that a guf of a person cannot be considered a cover to itself. For instance, if you don't have a kippah, you want to say bracha, you cannot put your hand on your head and say bracha. Your hand is not a cover for your own guf. Somebody else's hand is a different story. If someone else puts their hand on your head, that's considered a hefsek. That's considered a kisui, a covering rather. But your own hand is not. So here, the Pri Chadash says, well, it's not, the guf cannot cover itself, so also cannot be a hefsek. But the other Achronim disagree with that, and they say that, no, because this is considered an unusual way of covering yourself, even the guf of a person itself could be considered a hefsek, and hence it will be mutar. Now, the Mishna Berurah writes to this, Perush imomet b'mayim slulim. For instance, if you're standing in clear water and your heart also is underneath the water level, and because you're not covered under the water and it's clear water, you need to make a division between heart and erva. Now, even though that when you are hugging your body, so to speak, with your arms, still you are touching the mekomot mechusim, the usually covered areas of your body, and in that case, usually you shouldn't be able to say bracha. We mentioned before that in halachot of netilat yadayim, that if a person touches a usually covered area of the body, that's underneath the garments, you touch your body, then you need netilat yadayim before you say bracha. So the Ben Ish Chai writes in his Sefer Torah Lishma, we generally speaking assume that that's a work authored by Ben Ish Chai, that still in this case will be mutar to say bracha, because the halacha of not being able to say bracha when you touch the areas of your body that are covered, it's makes you asur to say devarim shebikdusha, because you have milmule ze'ah, because you have dried up sweat and its dirtiness on your body, and therefore it will be asur. But if you're inside water, there's no chashash for milmule ze'ah. Anything that's there is going to be kind of like washed off with the water. So therefore, says the Ben Ish Chai, even though that you're touching your regularly covered, otherwise covered areas of the body, still will be mutar to say bracha. Now, Maran writes in Seif Dalit, יש מי שאומר שנשים יכולות לברך ולהתפלל כשהן לבושות חלוק, אף על פי שאינן מפסיקות למטה מהלב. The obvious question is, you have the halacha of libo ro'eh et ha'erva, that the heart could see the erva. So that makes sense by men, because the erva is kind of like exposed, extending from the level of the guf. But how about a woman that doesn't have that physiology? Would that be asur or not? So this seems to be a little bit of a stira between Maran in Orach Chaim over here and what Maran writes in Yoredea Siman Resh. Now here Maran writes, Yesh Omrim, there are those who say that a woman does not have this halakha. Therefore, if she has a gown without even doing this, a hugging business, it will be mutar for her to say bracha because the heart, so to speak, does not see the erva, because the erva is covered beneath the surface of the body, basically, and it will be mutar. Right? Maranin, again, the Yoredea seems to not indicate like that. So therefore, halachically speaking, even though that the Mishna Berurah over here paskins like Maran, and Chacham Obadia also paskins like Maran. For instance, the Chesed La'alafim, Rabbi Eliezer Papo, in this Siman, he just brings it as yesh veyesh. He says there are those who say is mutar, those who say is as is asur, even for women. Like the Kaf HaChaim is machmir, like the Bach. The Bach over here cites that even women would be asur for them. And even though the Mishna Berurah, as we mentioned, disagrees with that, the Kaf HaChaim agrees with the Bach. Why? It says because even though the Maran over here says yesh misha omer, in Yoredea, the stam of Shulchan Aruch Siman Resh is to be mahmir. So hence he says you have a yesh misha omer over here, over there is a stam. We go with the stam of the Shulchan Aruch in Yoredea, says the Kaf HaChaim. Now says the Mishna Berurah, now, what happens if a woman is not covered, doesn't have the gown even, right? So the Ramah writes, if they are not covered, if she's not wearing anything, then they have to be sitting, that the actual area of erva is covered with the surface they're sitting on, or sheyoshvot al she'ar davar de'az el liba ro'eh erva shelahen. Then it's not a problem of erva. Now, the problem is, even if you say there's no libo ro'eh ta'erva, you remember we mentioned there are two main issues with erva. There's one, lo yira'eh becha erva davar. It's not lo yir'eh only. It's lo yira'eh becha erva davar. That means not only your heart should not be able to see the erva, or you should not be able to see someone else's erva, but nobody else should be able to see your erva. So if somebody is exposed and their body is not covered, then there would be in transgression of this part of erva if they say a bracha. Hence, the erva should be covered with a surface that they're sitting on, and that would make it mutar. Now says the Mishna Berurah tuchot retzono lomar devukot umchusot bekarka, should be covered with the ground. The Kaf HaChaim writes that the area of the back, agavot, also is considered an erva by a woman, and therefore that also has to be covered with the ground in a way that the area of erva, which is the division between the two parts of it, would not be seen and visible to the outside, and that would be considered a covering of the erva, even though that the sides is no way to cover them when sitting down. There's no way that the ground is going to cover all of it, but lemaseh, if that part is covered, it's considered that the erva is being covered, and then they could say a bracha. Says the Mishna Berurah, Ve'ayim b'magen Avraham. Oh, one piece that we missed. By a man, this doesn't apply, because again, as we mentioned, the physiology is in a way that the area of erva is extended from the surface of the body, and you have the gid, the shaft, you have the betzim, and therefore, because they are extended from the body, it will become a problem. And Magen Avraham writes later on in Siman Reshvav, the af im agavot nir'in en la'akpid. that even the area of the back is not something to be very specific about the agavot in ba'em mishum erva, because that's not considered necessarily a full-fledged erva. A little bit seems from the Perush of Bin Gaon also like this, and the Eliyahu Rabbah paskins that agavot are considered erva. The area of the back also is considered erva. Now, what's the halacha by that? Mishna Berurah kind of like brings a mix of achronim holding asur and holding is mutar. The Kaf HaChaim says that the area of agavot is considered erva, and so is the psak of Or Lezion, that you have to at least be mahmir. And the Mishna Berurah itself really also later on in Siman Resh Zayin also paskins that lechatchila a person should be mahmir. So halachically speaking, comes out that this is a question that you asked prior, and we waited until we get here. So that's machloket achronim. And even though that the Mishna Berurah doesn't have a clear-cut psak, later on in Shulchan Aruch it seems to be mahmir, and so is the psak of Kaf HaChaim, so is the psak of Rabbi Sion Abba Shaul. So that's the right way of going to relate to the agavot also halachically as a consideration of erva. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will continue these in the days to come.